Hello guys, this is Champion Marks here for a new series that I'm going to be starting. This series is Competitive Pokemon Battling for Beginners. A guide to the competitive aspects of Pokemon battling for trainers who are fairly new to online battles, so hopefully this will help all you guys out. Now, this is going to be a 4-part series. Each part is going to be a different video going over a different aspect of competitive battling in Pokemon. The parts are going to be like this. Part 1, this video, is going to be going over tiers. Part 2 is going to be going over basic team building for a competitive battling team. And Part 3 is going to be going over EV training, which is mostly what the competitive battling is all about. Lastly, part 4 is going to be going over IVs. So without further ado, let's get started with part 1, tiers. Now, for starters, what are tiers? Basically, tiers are the classification for Pokemon depending on how good they are, based on their stats, move pools, abilities, and overall what they can do as a Pokemon. And there are 5 basic classifications for the Pokemon in tiers. The classifications for Pokemon tiers are NFE, NU, UU, OU, and Uber, and I'll be going over each of these tiers in relative detail. First, we have the NFE tier. This tier is comprised of Pokemon like Bulbasaur, Magimaru, Slowpoke, who are not fully evolved, as that's what NFE stands for. The Pokemon in this tier, of course, haven't reached their final stage, thus they are really not usable in even the lowest of the tiers, NU, which I'll go over in a second. Pretty much any not fully evolved Pokemon can be used in this tier, with exception to some like Scizor, Sneasel, Pikachu with a Light Ball, and a couple others that I can't remember at this moment, as they are too powerful for the other not fully evolved Pokemon, and are probably slapped into one of the other tiers. Anyway, for the next tier, we have NU. NU is basically a tier comprised of the worst for the fully evolved Pokemon. These Pokemon have incredibly shallow move pools, very poor stats in general, and just overall are not very powerful Pokemon. They can't take hits, can't dish them out much better either. And the Pokemon in this tier are basically, yeah, the worst of the worst. Even though they are usable, it's incredibly hard to use them in any other tier other than the never used tier. So yeah, that's the never used tier for you. And next up we have the UU tier. UU Pokemon are Pokemon that are not super overpowered, but are still incredibly good Pokemon in themselves, like Venusaur, Steelix, and Hitmonlee, who are generally fast, very bulky, but not super mega bulky or powerful as Pokemon. They're basically the second best of the Pokemon in the Pokemon tiers, while they're not OU for being overpowered, they're not NU because they're not incredibly poor. And next we have the OU tier. Now, if you can guess what that stands for, which you probably can because it's written right there on the screen, OU is the overused Pokemon. And it's pretty self-explanatory. These Pokemon are overly used because of their massive attack and special attack stats, incredible speed, and some of them their amazing bulk, which allows them to take hits like nothing. And the Pokemon in this tier are, of course, the most powerful in the game, aside from the Ubers tier, which I'll go over in a second, because they have incredible move pools, can set up relatively easily, and are just way powerful, and are just put in this tier for because none of the other tiers Pokemon can handle these guys effectively. And yeah, that's basically the OU tier for you. Lastly, we have the Ubers tier. This tier comprises of Pokemon that are deemed so overpowered that no other Pokemon in the game would be able to handle them. Thus, they are thrown into this tier, where they are basically forced to battle only themselves, as they are the only kind of Pokemon that would be able to, well, deal with Pokemon that have such huge stats, amazingly powerful moves, and some of them incredibly broken move sets, like Darkrai in here with his Dark Void, Bad Dreams, shit going down, with his incredibly high special attack and speed. Now, this tier mostly is comprised of the legendaries, legendary Pokemon of all the generations. However, not all legendaries are in the Ubers tier, as not all of them have amazing stats that would put them in this tier. Now, the list of Pokemon that are Uber that are legends is a lot shorter than the list of Pokemon that are not Uber that are legends, so I'll just list off the Pokemon that are Uber for you. Pokemon that are Uber include Mewtwo, Lugia, Ho-Oh, Deoxys, Rayquaza, Groudon, Kyogre, uh, Arceus, Darkrai, Giratina, Shaman Skyform, Dialga, and the newest additions, Reshiram and Zekrom. Any other legendaries that have not been listed are used in either the OU, NU, or UU tier. And for your convenience, I will put a list of all the tiers for what the Pokemon are classified for in tiers, a link to a list of that in the description. So yeah, that is the end of part 1 for my competitive Pokemon battling guide. I'll see you in the next part, part 2, for basic team building. Thank you, and goodbye.